At 75, her son threw her out, but her dog led her to a truth her mother hid for decades. The door clicked shut behind Evelyn, soft but final. She stood on the curb with a single suitcase, the air turning cold around her, while her German shepherd pressed close, sensing what she couldn't yet face. Hours later, with nowhere left to go, she would follow a memory she had buried for 50 years, back to a boarded-up cottage that never stopped waiting. Have you ever gone back to a place you swore you'd never return to? The door didn't slam. It clicked. Soft, clean, final. Evelyn Mercer stood on the curb with her suitcase still in her hand, as if she hadn't quite caught up to what had just happened. The late afternoon light in Columbus had turned that pale gray it gets before rain, and the wind moved through the quiet street without much purpose, stirring the leaves along the sidewalk. She stared at the front door of her son's house. White. Fresh paint. The brass handle polished. The same door she had walked through 1,000 times. Now it was just a door. Behind her, the street stretched out in both directions. Neat lawns, trimmed hedges, mailboxes standing straight like they had something to prove. A woman 2 houses down paused while bringing in her trash bin, just long enough to look. Not staring, just noticing. Evelyn lowered her eyes. Her fingers tightened around the handle of the suitcase. The leather was cracked, soft from years of use. She had owned it longer than Daniel had owned that house. Mom, it's just for a while. His voice still lingered in her ears, not loud, not cruel. That was the part that stayed with her. There had been no anger, no fight, just explanation, just reasoning. Just that careful tone people use when they've already made up their minds. I think it's better this way. Better for who? She hadn't asked. She had nodded instead. Smiled even. A small one. The kind you give when you don't want to make things harder. Now she stood outside with everything she had packed into one suitcase and a silence that pressed against her chest like something heavy and unseen. Beside her, Rex shifted his weight. The German shepherd leaned into her leg, steady and warm, his body solid in a way the rest of the world no longer felt. His fur brushed against her coat, and she rested her hand absently on his head. He didn't move away. Didn't look at the house. His eyes were on her. Dark, alert, waiting. It's all right, she said quietly, though her voice didn't quite reach the end of the sentence. Rex's ears flicked, catching something she couldn't hear. A car passing at the far end of the street. A screen door somewhere. The faint hum of a lawnmower blocks away. But he stayed close. Closer than usual. Evelyn took a breath. It came in shallow, like her lungs had forgotten how to fill properly. She tried again, slower this time, letting the air settle before letting it go. The key was still in her coat pocket. She could feel it there. Cold, small, familiar. For a moment, just a moment, she thought about turning around, walking back up the short path, knocking. Daniel would open the door. He always did. He'd look at her the way he had earlier, tired, a little strained, but still her son. Maybe he would say, "All right, Mom, come back in." Maybe. But the thought didn't go any further than that. Because she knew. It wasn't that kind of ending. The house had already decided. She shifted the suitcase in her hand. The weight of it pulled at her shoulder, a dull ache spreading down her arm. She hadn't packed much. A few clothes, some papers, a photograph she hadn't looked at in years. The rest she had left behind, or maybe it had left her. A curtain moved in one of the front windows. just slightly. Evelyn noticed it without meaning to. She looked away. Rex gave a low, quiet sound in his throat. Not quite a growl, not quite a whine. Just a vibration, like he was trying to understand something that didn't make sense. "It's all right," she said again, softer this time. She wasn't sure who she was saying it for. The sky darkened a shade deeper. Somewhere above the rooftops, clouds gathered, thick and slow. The air smelled faintly of rain and cut grass, that familiar scent of a neighborhood settling into evening. People would be coming home soon. Lights would turn on. Dinner would start. Normal things. Evelyn stood there a moment longer, as if waiting for something to interrupt it all. A voice, a call, a mistake being corrected. Nothing came. Rex nudged her hand. Not hard. Just enough. She looked down at him. His tail was still. His body steady. His eyes fixed on her face like he was waiting for a command she hadn't given. She exhaled. Then, slowly, she turned away from the house. The movement felt heavier than it should have, like she was pulling something loose that didn't want to let go. The sidewalk stretched ahead of her, empty except for a few scattered leaves skittering along the concrete. One step, then another. The suitcase wheels rattled faintly as she set it down and pulled it behind her. The sound echoed more than it should have in the quiet street. Rex walked beside her, close enough that his shoulder brushed her leg every few steps. He didn't look back, neither did she. At the end of the block, she stopped. Not because she meant to, just stopped. There was a bus stop there. A simple metal bench, paint chipped along the edges. A small sign leaning slightly to one side. She had passed it countless times before, never thinking much about it. Now it felt like the only place that existed. She sat down carefully, lowering herself with the slow precision of someone who had learned not to trust sudden movements. The bench was cold through her coat. Rex sat beside her immediately, close. Always close. Evelyn rested her hands in her lap, staring out at the street without really seeing it. The world moved in small ways, branches swaying, a distant car turning the corner, the faint flicker of a porch light coming on somewhere. Life continuing. Unaware, unchanged. She tried to picture what came next, and found nothing. No plan, no destination, just a blank space where something should have been. For 75 years, she had always known where she was supposed to be. A home, a role, a place at the table. Now there was just this bench, this suitcase, this dog who refused to leave her side. The wind picked up again, sharper this time. It lifted a strand of her gray hair and brushed it across her cheek. She didn't move to fix it. Rex shifted slightly, pressing closer, his body heat steady against her. Evelyn let her hand fall to his back, fingers resting in the thick fur at his shoulders. Solid. Real. Still here. She closed her eyes for a moment. Just one. And in that brief darkness, the truth settled in, quiet and heavy. The life she thought was stable was gone. Not slowly, not over time, but all at once in a single afternoon. When she opened her eyes again, the street looked the same, but nothing felt the same. And for the first time in a long, long while, Evelyn Mercer had nowhere to go. The bus came 15 minutes later. She didn't remember deciding to get on it, only that it stopped. The doors folded open with a tired hiss, and the driver looked at her, then at the suitcase, then at Rex. "No dogs," he said at first, automatic. Rex didn't move, didn't bark, didn't shift, just sat there, steady, watching. The driver hesitated, looked again. Something in the stillness, maybe. Something in Evelyn's face. Service? Evelyn opened her mouth, paused, then nodded once. The driver exhaled through his nose and stepped aside. All right. Just keep him close. I will, she said. Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. The bus smelled like damp fabric and old vinyl. A few people scattered through the seats, heads down, headphones in, lost in their own small worlds. No one looked up for long. Evelyn sat near the back. Rex curled at her feet without being told, his body folding neatly into the narrow space, but his head stayed up, ears forward, watching. Always watching. The city passed by the window in slow fragments. Corner stores, gas stations, a laundromat with flickering lights, then wider roads, less traffic. The buildings thinning out, giving way to stretches of open land that looked tired and overused. Evelyn didn't follow any of it. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers laced together, the knuckles pale. She tried once to think of somewhere. A friend, a neighbor, someone she could call. But the names came and went like shadows. People she hadn't spoken to in years. People who had their own lives now, their own routines, their own reasons not to take in an old woman with a suitcase and a dog. She let the thoughts go. The bus rocked gently as it moved, the rhythm steady, almost soothing. For a moment, her eyes drifted closed, and that was when it came back. Not clear. Never clear. Just a feeling. A hallway. Dim light. The smell of something burned. Maybe toast. Maybe something worse. A door closing somewhere in the house. Her mother's voice, low, urgent, not angry, but strained. Evelyn opened her eyes. The bus was still there. Rex was still there. His head had turned slightly, watching her now instead of the aisle. I'm fine, she murmured. He didn't believe her. She could tell. He shifted closer, pressing his side against her shoes. The rest of the ride blurred together. By the time the bus reached the terminal, the sky had darkened completely. A fine drizzle had started, soft at first, then steadier, tapping against the windows like fingers that didn't want to be heard. Evelyn stepped down onto wet pavement. The air smelled different here, cooler, less of the city, more open somehow. There was a motel across the street. One of those places with a flickering neon sign and doors that opened straight to the outside. The kind you don't choose, the kind you end up at. She crossed the street slowly, Rex pacing beside her, his paws silent against the wet ground. Inside, the office was small, warm in that stale way, like the heat had been on too long. A man behind the counter glanced up from a television mounted in the corner. Room? He asked. Yes. He looked at Rex, then back at her. Extra 20 for the dog. Evelyn nodded without arguing. She didn't have the energy. The room was on the ground floor. Number 7. The key was attached to a thick plastic tag that had once been white. Inside, the light buzzed faintly when she flipped the switch. The carpet smelled faintly of something chemical. The bedspread was patterned in a way that tried to hide stains and didn't quite succeed. Evelyn set the suitcase down near the wall. For a moment, she just stood there. The room felt temporary, like it didn't belong to anyone. Rex walked the perimeter first, slow, careful, nose close to the ground, then lifting, testing the air. He checked the corners, the bathroom door, the space beneath the bed. Satisfied, finally, He returned to her. Waited. Evelyn moved to the edge of the bed and lowered herself down. The mattress dipped more than she expected, springs shifting beneath the weight. Her hands rested on her knees. Still. She could hear the rain more clearly now, tapping against the window in uneven patterns. Somewhere nearby, a car door slammed. A muffled voice followed, then silence again. She reached down almost without thinking and touched Rex's head. His fur was dry, warm, real. The only thing that felt steady. Minutes passed. Or maybe longer. Time didn't move the way it usually did. Then, quietly, something surfaced. A thought. Not new, just buried. A place. She hadn't said the name out loud in years. Didn't even think it anymore. Not directly. But now it came back, slow and certain, like something that had been waiting. Her mother's cottage, West Virginia, the hills, the trees that seemed too close together, the long dirt road that never quite felt like a road. Evelyn's fingers stilled in Rex's fur. "No," she whispered. The word came out sharper than she expected. Rex's ears lifted immediately. He stood, looked at her, then at the door, then back at her again. Evelyn shook her head slightly, as if the movement could push the memory away. "I'm not going back there," she said, quieter this time. But the thought didn't leave. It stayed, persistent, heavy. She could see pieces now, not full memories, just edges, the way the trees had blocked out the sky, the sound of wind moving through them at night, the feeling of being watched, even when she was alone. And her mother. Always moving, always listening, always tense. Evelyn swallowed. Rex began to pace. Not fast, not anxious, but deliberate. Back and forth between the door and the window, then back to her. Again. Again. "What is it?" she asked softly. He stopped in front of her, looked straight at her. There was something in his posture she had seen before, but not often. Alert. Focused. As if he had already decided something. Evelyn let out a slow breath. The room suddenly felt smaller, too small, like it was closing in around her. She looked at the suitcase, at the thin walls, at the door that didn't quite sit straight in its frame. Then back at Rex. "You don't like it here," she said. He didn't move, didn't need to. She nodded faintly. "Neither do I." The words settled in the air between them. Simple. True. She leaned back slightly on the bed, staring up at the ceiling where the light cast a dull yellow glow. West Virginia. She hadn't thought about it in decades. Not really. There had been a reason for that. But now there was nothing else. No house. No plan. No one waiting for her anywhere else. Just that place. That cottage. And everything she had spent a lifetime not understanding. Rex let out a low breath and finally lay down at her feet, but his eyes stayed open. Watching. Waiting. Evelyn closed her eyes. Not to sleep. Just to sit with it. The memory. The place, the weight of it. When she opened them again, nothing had changed. Except one thing. The thought wasn't going away. And deep down, somewhere she hadn't listened to in a very long time, she already knew that was where she was going. Not because she wanted to, but because there was nowhere else left to go. Evelyn didn't sleep much that night. The motel bed creaked every time she shifted, and the rain came and went in uneven bursts, tapping against the window, then fading, then returning again. At some point, the television in the room next door stayed on too loud, voices bleeding through the thin wall until they blurred into something meaningless. Rex didn't sleep either. He lay at the foot of the bed, head resting on his paws, eyes half open but never fully closing. Every so often, his ears would twitch toward a sound. Footsteps outside, a car door, a voice passing by, and then settle again. By morning, the sky had cleared. Cold light came in through the window, pale and flat. Evelyn sat on the edge of the bed, already dressed, her coat folded neatly beside her. The suitcase stood where she had left it. Nothing in the room looked touched, as if she had only passed through without staying. She rubbed her hands together once, slow, then stood. The bus station was smaller than the one she'd arrived at. Older, too. The kind of place where the paint had peeled in thin strips along the walls and the benches carried the marks of years of use. A sign overhead listed routes in fading letters. West Virginia was there. A line she hadn't followed in decades. Evelyn stood in front of it longer than she needed to. Rex sat at her side, quiet but alert, his gaze shifting between her and the movement around them. A man with a duffel bag passed too close, and Rex leaned slightly into Evelyn's leg without making a sound. "Easy," she murmured. Her hand found his neck. He settled. The ticket clerk barely looked up when she approached. 1-2. "Beckley," she said, after a moment's hesitation. Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. The clerk typed something, printed the ticket, slid it across the counter. "Bus leaves in 20. Evelyn nodded. She took the ticket, holding it between her fingers like it might change if she looked away. 20 minutes. She sat on a bench near the far wall. The seat was cold through her coat, metal pressing into her back. Across from her, a television mounted high in the corner played a morning news segment no one was really watching. The sound was low. A weather map flickered on the screen, colors shifting across counties she hadn't thought about in years. Rex lay down at her feet, but his head stayed up. Watching. Always watching. Evelyn looked at the ticket again. Beckley. From there, she knew it would be smaller roads, less direct, the kind that curved through hills and trees, where signs weren't always clear and directions depended on memory more than maps. Memory. She exhaled slowly. That was the problem. When the bus arrived, it was half full. Different driver this time. Younger. He glanced at Rex, then at Evelyn, then nodded without asking questions. "Keep him close," he said. "I will." They took a seat near the middle. This time, Evelyn chose the window. The engine rumbled to life, low and steady, and the bus pulled away from the station with a slow turn that made everything inside shift just slightly. The town fell away behind them. Buildings first, then houses, then stretches of road that seemed to go on longer than they should. Evelyn rested her hand against the glass. It was cool. Outside, the sky hung low, clouds stretched thin across it like something worn out. They drove for a while without much change. Then, gradually, the land began to lift. Not sharply, just enough to notice. The road curved more. The trees thickened. Gas stations appeared less often, and when they did, they looked older. Faded signs, rusted edges, places that had been there a long time and never quite left. Evelyn watched it all without focusing. Her mind drifted. Not forward, not exactly backward either. Just somewhere in between. A shape of a memory. A voice low, urgent, not angry. Never angry. That was the strange part. She had spent years remembering her mother as distant, cold, absent even when she was there. But the fragments coming back now didn't fit that. They felt different. Tight, careful, like someone holding something in. Evelyn frowned slightly. Rex shifted beside her. He had been still for most of the ride, but now his posture changed. His body lifted just enough, muscles tightening under his coat. His ears angled forward. He was looking out the window. Not casually. Focused. Evelyn followed his gaze. There was nothing obvious. Just trees. More of them now. Taller. Closer together. The kind that blocked out pieces of the sky as the road dipped and curved through them. But something about the way Rex held himself made her sit up a little straighter. "What is it?" she asked quietly. He didn't look at her. Didn't respond. Just watched. The bus moved deeper into the hills. The air outside seemed different now. Even through the closed windows, there was a sense of it. Cooler, heavier, carrying a smell that wasn't quite pine and wasn't quite earth. Something older. Evelyn shifted in her seat. A flicker of something passed through her. Not fear. Not yet. But close to it. She pressed her fingers lightly against the glass again. And for a moment, just a moment, she could see it. A road. Narrow. Barely more than a line between trees. A mailbox leaning at an angle. A shape of a house beyond it. Then it was gone. The present came back into place. The bus. The seat. The steady hum of the engine. Evelyn pulled her hand back slowly. Her breath had changed. Shallower now. Rex finally turned his head. Looked at her. Their eyes met. There was something there she couldn't quite name. Not warning. Not exactly. More like recognition. As if he was sensing something she hadn't fully reached yet. She swallowed. "It's just a place," she said under her breath. The words didn't settle. They hung there, thin and uncertain. Outside, the road curved again, sharper this time. The trees closed in tighter. And the light changed. It filtered down through the branches in narrow strips, breaking the sky into pieces. The bus slowed slightly as it climbed. The engine strained, a low groan under the steady rhythm. Evelyn leaned back in her seat, closed her eyes for a second. But the darkness didn't help. It only made the fragments clearer. A door closing. A window being covered. Her mother's hands, moving quickly, deliberately, doing something she didn't understand. Then nothing. She opened her eyes again. Rex hadn't moved, still watching, still alert. Evelyn let out a slow breath. The road stretched ahead, and with every mile, it felt less like she was traveling somewhere new and more like she was being led back to something that had never really let her go. The bus slowed before it stopped. There wasn't much of a station, just a patch of cracked pavement, a faded sign with the town's name barely visible through years of sun and weather. A single bench leaned slightly to one side, like it had grown tired of standing straight. Evelyn didn't recognize the name at first. Then something inside her did. Not clearly. Just a pull. "This is you," the driver called, glancing back. Evelyn stood carefully, steadying herself with one hand on the seat. Rex rose with her instantly, already alert, already watching the door before it opened. The air hit her first. Cooler than it had been anywhere along the road. Cleaner, too. But there was something else in it. Something faint and difficult to name. Not unpleasant. Just old. Like damp wood and fallen leaves that had been left alone too long. She stepped down onto the pavement. Rex followed, landing softly beside her. The bus door closed behind them with that same tired hiss, and then it was gone, pulling away, engine fading, leaving nothing but quiet in its wake. Too quiet. Evelyn stood there for a moment, her suitcase at her side, the sound of the bus disappearing into the distance. No cars passed, no voices. Just wind, moving through trees she hadn't even noticed until now. Tall, close together, the kind that didn't leave much sky. Rex shifted beside her. Not anxious. Focused. His ears angled forward, his body leaning just slightly toward the road that stretched away from the small stop. "All right," Evelyn said softly, more to herself than to him. She reached for the handle of her suitcase and began walking. The road was narrower than she expected. Gravel at first, then packed dirt, uneven in places where rain had worn it down. The further she went, the quieter it became. Even her own footsteps seemed to soften, swallowed by the trees that closed in on either side. She didn't check a map. Didn't need to. Her feet moved with a kind of memory her mind hadn't caught up to yet, a turn she didn't think about. A slight curve she followed without hesitation. It unsettled her. "I don't remember this," she murmured. But her body did. Rex moved ahead of her now, not pulling, not rushing, just leading by a step or two, glancing back every so often to make sure she followed. The trees grew thicker, the light dimmer, even though it was still afternoon. The air felt cooler here, heavier somehow, the scent of damp earth stronger, mixed with something faintly sweet, like wildflowers hidden somewhere out of sight. Evelyn slowed. Something shifted in her chest. Not fear, not yet, but something close enough that she noticed it. She stopped. Rex stopped too. Turned. Waited. She looked ahead, and then she saw it. At first, it didn't look like anything, just a break in the trees. A space where the woods pulled back just enough to reveal something beyond. She took a few steps forward, and the shape came into view. The cottage. It stood slightly off-center in the clearing, as if it had shifted over time but never quite fallen. The porch leaned at an angle, one corner lower than the rest. The boards along the front were faded to a gray that had once been white. The windows covered. Not neatly. Boards nailed across them, uneven, some darker than others, like they had been replaced at different times. Evelyn stopped at the edge of the clearing. Her breath caught without warning. It wasn't the condition of the house. She had expected worse. It was the feeling, the stillness. No movement, no sound, not even birds. The wind moved through the trees behind her, but here, in this small open space, it seemed to hesitate, as if it didn't quite belong. Rex stepped forward first, just one step, then another. His body lowered slightly, not in fear but in focus. His head moved slowly from side to side, reading something she couldn't see. "Rex," she said quietly. He didn't come back. Didn't ignore her either. He just continued. careful, measured. Evelyn followed. Each step felt heavier than it should have. The ground beneath her feet was soft, covered in layers of leaves that hadn't been cleared in years. They shifted under her weight with a faint, dry sound. The closer she got, the clearer the details became. The porch railing was cracked. One of the steps sagged in the middle. The front door, still there, slightly crooked in its frame. Unpainted wood showing through where the color had worn away. Evelyn stopped again. Right at the edge of the yard. Her hand tightened on the suitcase. This was it. The place she hadn't allowed herself to remember. The place she had told herself didn't matter, didn't exist anymore. Rex stood halfway between her and the house now. Still, watching. Not the door, not the windows. Everything. As if the entire place held something worth paying attention to. Evelyn's gaze moved slowly over the cottage. The roof dipped slightly in the center. The boards along the side were warped. But it hadn't collapsed. Hadn't fallen apart the way abandoned places usually did. It was still standing, still there, waiting. She felt it then. Clearer than before. Not just memory. Recognition. Something deep and quiet, settling into place in a way that made her chest tighten. "I remember this," she whispered. The words surprised her. They came without thought. Rex turned his head slightly, as if he had been waiting for her to say it. Evelyn took one more step forward, then another. The air shifted as she moved deeper into the clearing. Cooler, still. The kind of stillness that didn't feel empty, but held something. She stopped at the base of the porch. The wood creaked faintly as the wind touched it, a soft sound that barely carried. Her eyes moved to the front door. Closed, sealed by time more than anything else. She could feel her heartbeat now. Slow. Heavy. Each beat echoing just enough to notice. Behind her, the trees stood tall and quiet. In front of her, the house remained exactly as it was. Unchanged, unwelcoming, but not abandoned. Not really. Rex stepped up onto the first porch board. It groaned under his weight. He paused there, looked back at her, not urging, not impatient, just waiting. Evelyn stared at him for a moment, then at the door, then saw back at the house as a whole. She realized something she hadn't expected. It wasn't just that she had come back. It was that the place had never let her leave. Not completely, not in the way she had believed. She took a breath, slow, unsteady, and stepped onto the porch. The wood shifted beneath her foot, the sound louder now in the quiet. Rex didn't move. He stayed where he was, watching her, steady and present. Evelyn stood beside him, close enough to touch the door. But she didn't. Not yet. Because for the first time since she had stepped off that bus, she understood something clearly. This place wasn't just where she had come from. It was where something had been left unfinished. And now, after all these years, it was waiting for her to come back and face it. Evelyn stood in front of the door, her hand hovering just inches from the wood. Up close, she could see the details she had missed before. The grain of the door had raised over time, small ridges where moisture had worked its way in and out through the years. The paint, what little remained, had peeled back in thin curls, exposing raw wood beneath. A faint line marked where the door didn't quite sit flush in the frame anymore. It hadn't been opened in a long time. Rex shifted beside her. His body leaned slightly forward, nose lifting toward the seam between the door and the frame. He inhaled once, then again, deeper. Not confused, not hesitant. Certain. Evelyn swallowed. "I know," she said softly, though she wasn't sure what she meant. Her fingers finally touched the door. The wood was cold. Not the surface kind of cold, but something deeper, a chill that had settled in and stayed. She pressed gently. Nothing. The door didn't move. Of course it didn't. She pushed again, this time with more weight behind it. There was a sound. Not loud. Just a low, strained groan from the hinges and the swollen wood resisting movement. Evelyn stepped back slightly, adjusting her footing. Rex stepped off to the side, giving her space. She tried again, this time with her shoulder. The wood gave, just a fraction. A thin crack opened between the door and the frame, letting out a breath of air that had been trapped inside for years. It carried a smell. Dust, yes, but not decay. Something else beneath it. Faint. Clean. Like soap that had long since faded but never fully disappeared. Evelyn froze. That scent. It didn't belong in a place like this. Her chest tightened. She pushed harder. The door opened another inch, then two. The sound of it stretched out, slow and uneven, like the house itself was waking reluctantly from something deep. Finally, with one last push, the door gave way. It opened just enough for her to step through. She didn't move right away. The interior sat in front of her, dim and still. Light filtered in through small cracks where the boards over the windows didn't quite seal the edges. It cut through the air in narrow lines, catching particles of dust that floated slowly, undisturbed. Evelyn stepped inside. The floor creaked beneath her. Not weak, just aware. Rex followed immediately, slipping past her and stopping just inside the doorway. His head moved slowly, scanning. The house didn't smell abandoned. That was the first thing she noticed. It smelled kept. Not recently, but carefully. A long time ago. The air held onto it. The scent of old fabric, clean wood, a trace of something floral that lingered faintly under everything else. Evelyn closed the door behind her without thinking. The sound echoed softly. Too softly, like the walls absorbed it instead of sending it back. She stood there for a moment, letting her eyes adjust. The room in front of her was small. A table sat near the center, its surface coated in a thin layer of dust that had settled evenly over time. Two chairs pushed in neatly, not abandoned mid-use, not scattered. Placed. Intentional. On the table sat a teacup, upside down, resting on a saucer. Evelyn's breath caught. "That shouldn't be here," she murmured. It wasn't broken, wasn't cracked. It looked set aside, as if someone had meant to come back. Her gaze shifted. To the wall, a coat still hung on a hook near the door. Worn, faded, but not thrown there. Placed. Carefully. Like everything else. Rex moved forward. Slow steps. Nose low, tracing the floor, then lifting slightly as he followed a scent trail that only he could read. "Rex," Evelyn called gently. He didn't stop, didn't ignore her, just continued. Focused. Evelyn took a few steps deeper into the room. Each movement stirred the dust just enough to notice. The air shifted slightly around her, disturbed for the first time in years. She reached out and touched the table. Her fingers dragged lightly across the surface, leaving a clean line through the thin layer of dust. It wasn't thick. Not like it should have been. Not after this long. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "That doesn't make sense," she said quietly. Rex moved into the next room. The sound of his paws changed as he crossed onto a different section of floor, slightly hollow, slightly uneven. Evelyn followed. The living area opened up just beyond the first room. A chair sat near the far wall, angled toward a small window that had been boarded over from the outside. A thin line of light pushed through the edge, falling across the arm of the chair in a narrow strip. A blanket lay draped over the back, folded, not tossed. Everything was like that. Not abandoned. Arranged. Evelyn stepped closer to the chair. Her hand hovered above the fabric, then lowered. The material was stiff with age, but not brittle. It hadn't been left to rot. It had been left, waiting. Rex circled the room once, then again, each time slower, more deliberate. He paused near the wall, nose lifting, testing the air again, then moved on. Not settling, not resting, working. Evelyn watched him. A quiet unease settled deeper in her chest. This wasn't what she expected. She had prepared herself for ruin, for collapse, for something she could dismiss. But this felt like stepping into something that had been pursued. Not ended. Paused. Her eyes moved slowly across the room, taking in each detail, each small, deliberate placement, each sign that someone had lived here and had not meant to leave it behind. A faint sound broke the stillness, not loud, just the shift of Rex's movement as he passed into the hallway. Evelyn turned. "Where are you going?" she asked softly. He didn't answer, didn't look back, just kept moving. She hesitated, only for a second, then followed. Because whatever this place had been, whatever it still was, Rex understood something about it, something she didn't. Not yet. And for the first time since she stepped inside, Evelyn realized she wasn't leading anymore. She was following. And the house, quiet, still, and untouched, was beginning to show her pieces of a life she had never truly known. Rex moved ahead into the narrow hallway, his nails clicking softly against the worn floorboards. Evelyn followed. The hallway was dim, the light from the main room fading quickly behind her. The air felt cooler here, heavier somehow, like it hadn't been disturbed in a very long time. Her hand brushed against the wall as she walked. The wood was smooth, worn, but not neglected. She passed a small table tucked against the wall. Something sat on it. A frame. Evelyn slowed, then stopped. She reached for it without thinking. Her fingers trembled slightly as she lifted it, brushing away a thin layer of dust with the sleeve of her coat. And then she saw it. A photograph. Old, faded at the edges, but clear enough. A little girl. 7, maybe 8. Standing in sunlight, her hair caught mid-motion, her smile wide and unguarded. Evelyn stared. "That's me," she whispered. The words felt strange in her mouth. She hadn't seen this picture in decades. Hadn't even known it still existed. Her eyes shifted to the figure beside the child. A woman. Her mother. younger than Evelyn remembered, softer. Her arm wrapped gently around the girl's shoulders, pulling her close, and she was smiling. Not the tight, distant expression Evelyn had carried in her memory all these years, but something else. Warm, open, alive. Evelyn's breath caught. "That's not right," she said quietly. Her voice barely carried in the hallway. "That's not how it was." Her fingers tightened around the frame. Her chest rose and fell, uneven now. The memory she had lived with for most of her life didn't match what she was seeing. Not even close. In her mind, her mother had always been distant, cold, gone even when she was there. But this woman in the photograph, she looked like someone who loved, someone present, someone kind. Evelyn shook her head slightly, as if the movement might shift the image into something more familiar. It didn't. Behind her, the house remained silent. In front of her, the photograph stayed exactly the same, unchanged. Rex returned to her side. Quiet. He nudged her hand gently, his nose brushing against her wrist. Evelyn didn't look at him right away. Her eyes stayed fixed on the photograph. "I don't remember this," she murmured. Not to Rex, not to anyone. Just out loud, as if saying it might make it clearer. Rex nudged her again, softer this time, more deliberate. She blinked, then lowered the frame slowly. Her fingers lingered on the edge for a moment before she set it back exactly where she had found it. Carefully, as if disturbing it too much might change something she wasn't ready to lose. She stood there for a few seconds, still, trying to make sense of the feeling building in her chest. It wasn't just confusion, it was something deeper, something cracking. Rex turned, walked further down the hallway, then stopped, looked back, waiting. Evelyn exhaled slowly, then followed. At the end of the hall, a doorway opened into a smaller room, the bedroom. The air inside felt different, heavier. Not in a suffocating way, just fuller. Like it held something the rest of the house didn't. Evelyn stepped inside. The bed sat against the far wall, neatly made. The blanket pulled tight, corners tucked in with care. A small dresser stood beside it. On top, another frame. Evelyn moved toward it. Slower this time, more cautious. She reached out, lifted it. Her breath caught again. It was her older. Not a child this time. Maybe 17. Standing in front of a school building, a book held loosely in one hand. She looked serious in this one, reserved. But the photo had been taken from a distance, not posed, not given. Taken. Evelyn's throat tightened. "She wasn't there," she said softly. She wasn't there. But the photograph said otherwise. Someone had been there. Close enough. Watching. The room seemed smaller now, the air heavier. Her chest tightened. A memory flickered again. A door closing. Her mother's voice. Low, urgent. Not angry. Never angry. Evelyn pressed her lips together. Her eyes burned slightly, but no tears came. Not yet. Behind her, Rex shifted again. He stepped closer this time, pressed his side gently against her leg, grounding her. Evelyn let her hand fall to his back. Her fingers sank into the thick fur between his shoulders. Steady. warm, real. She took a breath, then another. The photographs didn't match her memory. The house didn't match her memory. Nothing here did. And that, more than anything, unsettled her. Because if this wasn't how it had been, then what was? Rex moved again. Not away. Not yet. But toward the far corner of the room. He paused there. Looked back. Waited. Evelyn followed his gaze. Then took a step toward him. Slow. Careful. Something in his posture had changed. More focused now. More intent. Like he had moved past wandering and found something. Evelyn felt it too. A shift. Small, but clear. The confusion inside her didn't settle. It sharpened. Turned into something else. Something closer to understanding, or the edge of it. She took another step. Closer to Rex. Closer to whatever had pulled him there. Behind her, the hallway remained quiet. The house held its breath. And in that small bedroom, with photographs that didn't belong to her memory, Evelyn realized something she hadn't expected. The story she had been carrying all these years might not be the truth at all. Evelyn stood in the bedroom, her hand still resting on Rex's back. The air felt tighter now. Not heavier, sharper. Like something had shifted just enough that it couldn't go back to what it had been before. Rex didn't move right away. He stood in the far corner, body angled slightly toward the floor, nose low, drawing in short, focused breaths. Then he began to scratch. Once, twice, not wild, not frantic, precise. Evelyn frowned. "What is it?" she asked softly. Rex didn't stop. His paw worked at the same spot again, claws catching lightly against the wood. A dull, hollow sound answered, different from the rest of the floor. Evelyn stepped closer. The boards here looked the same as the others, aged, worn, faded with time, but now that she was standing over them, she could see it. A slight shift, a line that didn't quite match the natural grain. Not damage. Cut. Her breath slowed. "You hear that?" she murmured, though she knew Rex wasn't listening for her words. He scratched again, then stopped. Sat back, looked up at her, waiting. Evelyn lowered herself carefully to her knees. The wood creaked under her weight, but held. She ran her fingers over the board. Slow. Tracing the line she hadn't noticed before. It was clean. Too clean. Her nail caught at the edge just enough to confirm it. This wasn't time. This was intention. Her heart began to beat harder now. Not fast, just deeper. She pressed her fingertips into the seam. Nothing moved. She shifted her hand. Tried again, this time pushing upward. The board resisted. For a moment, she thought it wouldn't budge at all. Then, a faint give. Barely there. Evelyn leaned forward, placing more weight behind it. The wood creaked. A sharp, dry sound as something old loosened. Then the board lifted, just enough to grip. She hooked her fingers under the edge and pulled. The piece came free slowly, as if it had been waiting but hadn't expected to be disturbed. Dust fell in a soft drift as it lifted. Evelyn set it aside. The space beneath was darker than she expected. Not empty, not just hollow. There was something there. Wrapped. Tucked carefully between the beams below. Evelyn stared at it for a moment. Her breath caught again. Rex leaned forward, nose hovering just above the opening, but he didn't touch it. He waited. Again. Always waiting for her. Evelyn reached down. Her hand trembled now, slightly, but enough to notice. Her fingers brushed against fabric. Old, thick. She gripped it and lifted. The bundle came up heavier than she expected. She set it gently on the floor beside her. Unwrapped it slowly. Inside, a metal box. Dark. Worn at the edges. The kind that had been handled many times, then left alone for a long time. Evelyn's throat tightened. This was hidden, she said quietly. Not a question. A realization. Rex sat beside her, his body still, his eyes fixed on the box. Evelyn rested her hand on the lid. It was cold. Colder than the air around it. She hesitated, just for a moment, then lifted it. The hinge gave with a soft, metallic sound. Inside, paper. Stacks of it. Neatly arranged, tied in bundles. Evelyn stared. Her breath slowed, then stopped. Letters. Dozens of them. Maybe more. Each one folded carefully, edges aligned. The top bundle was tied with a thin piece of faded string. Her hand hovered over it, then moved. She lifted one. The paper was yellowed with age, but not brittle. Preserved, protected. On the front, her name, written in careful, steady handwriting. Evelyn Mercer. Her chest tightened so suddenly, she had to inhale sharply to steady herself. "That's not possible," she whispered. She picked up another, and another. Each one the same. Her name. Again and again, written by the same hand. She swallowed. Rex shifted closer, his body pressing lightly against her side. Grounding. Always grounding. Evelyn reached deeper into the box. There was more. A small recorder, older model, the kind with buttons worn smooth from use, and beneath it, a notebook. Thin, worn along the edges. Its cover soft from handling. Everything inside the box had been placed with care, not hidden in panic. Hidden deliberately. For later. For someone. For her. Evelyn sat back slightly. The room felt different now, the air tighter, charged. As if something that had been silent for years was beginning to speak. Her eyes returned to the letters. All of them addressed to her. All of them never opened, never sent. Her fingers moved again, slower this time. She untied the string around the top bundle. The knot came loose easily, too easily, as if it had been tied knowing one day it would be opened. Evelyn held the first letter in her hands. She didn't unfold it yet, didn't read it, not immediately, because something inside her had already begun to shift. Not just doubt, not just confusion, something deeper. A realization forming at the edges of her thoughts. If these letters were real, if her mother had written them, then the story she had believed for most of her life was incomplete. Rex rested his head gently against her arm. Still. Quiet. Waiting. Evelyn looked down at him, then back at the letter in her hands. The house around her remained silent, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt full of something that had been waiting. She took a breath, slow, unsteady. And for the first time since she stepped into that house, Evelyn understood one thing clearly. Whatever truth was hidden here, it had been left for her to find. Evelyn sat on the bedroom floor, the box open in front of her. The house didn't move, didn't creak, didn't breathe. It simply held, as if it had been waiting for this exact moment. Her fingers rested on the first letter. She could feel the slight texture of the paper beneath her skin, the faint unevenness where ink had once pressed into it. Her name stared back at her, written by a hand she hadn't seen in decades. She swallowed. Then slowly, carefully, she unfolded it. The paper made a soft sound, barely louder than a whisper. The handwriting inside was the same. Steady, deliberate, familiar in a way that struck deeper than memory. Evelyn's eyes moved across the first line. My dearest Evelyn. Her breath caught. She didn't realize it until she tried to take another one. The words blurred for a second, then steadied. She read. And as she did, something inside her began to unravel. The letter didn't begin with apology. It began with explanation. Not rushed, not desperate. Careful. As if each word had been chosen with time. Her mother wrote about the night Evelyn had been sent away. Not as abandonment, but as decision. A necessary one. Evelyn's fingers tightened around the paper. That's not how it happened, she whispered. But she kept reading. Her mother described a man. Not by name, just by presence. Someone who had been coming to the house. Watching. Waiting. Someone who knew where they lived. Knew Evelyn. Knew enough to make staying dangerous. Evelyn's heart began to pound now. Slow. Heavy. Each beat echoing louder than the last. The words didn't accuse, didn't dramatize. They simply laid out what had been. Clear. Unavoidable. You were never safe here, the letter said. Evelyn's hands trembled. She read that line again, then again, and again. Rex shifted beside her, his body pressing closer, sensing the change in her breath, in her stillness. Evelyn reached out without looking and rested her hand against his neck. Grounding herself, she kept reading. Her mother wrote about the decision to send her away. How it wasn't sudden, how it had taken days, weeks. Watching, listening, waiting for the moment when it was clear that leaving was the only way to protect her. Evelyn shook her head slowly. No, she whispered. Her voice broke on the word. No, you left. But the letter didn't change. It didn't bend to her memory. It stayed exactly what it was. Her mother wrote about staying behind, about making the house look abandoned, boarding the windows, keeping a routine that no one could track, living quietly, carefully, invisible. Not because she wanted to disappear, but because being seen would have put Evelyn in danger. Evelyn's vision blurred again. This time she didn't blink it away. She let it come. The edges of the room softened. The dust in the air caught the fading light from the cracks in the boards, turning it gold. Rex lowered himself beside her, his body pressed against her hip. Steady. Warm. She turned the page. Her fingers moved slower now, more careful, as if each movement carried weight. The next part of the letter shifted. Less explanation. More presence. Her mother wrote about the years after Evelyn left. Not in detail, not every moment, just fragments, watching from a distance, never too close, never enough to be seen, but enough to know. Evelyn's breath caught again. "You grew up strong," the letter said. "I saw that." Her chest tightened. "How?" she whispered. Her voice barely made it past her lips. "How could you have seen anything?" She looked up briefly, as if expecting the house to answer. It didn't. It simply held her there. With the words. With the truth she hadn't asked for, but couldn't stop reading. The letter spoke of moments, small ones. Evelyn leaving school. Evelyn walking alone. Evelyn standing at a bus stop. Always from a distance. Always unseen. Evelyn's hand trembled again. Her grip on the paper loosened slightly, then tightened. "You were never alone," the letter said. The words landed differently, not comforting, not immediately, just heavy. Too heavy to understand all at once. Evelyn closed her eyes. Just for a second. And for the first time, she felt something break. Not loudly, not violently, just a quiet shift. A piece of something she had carried for years, loosening. Rex lifted his head slightly, watching her. Waiting. Evelyn opened her eyes again. She looked down at the letter, at the handwriting, at the words that had been written for her and never sent. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. She turned to the recorder. It sat where she had left it, small, still, silent. She reached for it. Her fingers hesitated over the buttons, then pressed one. There was a click, a faint whir, and then a voice, soft, older, but unmistakable. "Evelyn." Evelyn froze. Every part of her body went still. The voice continued. "I don't know if you'll ever hear this, but if you do..." It paused. A breath. "I need you to understand something." Evelyn's hand tightened around the recorder. Her knuckles turned pale. Rex pressed closer. The voice wasn't distant, wasn't imagined. It was real. Alive in the small space between them. "I never stopped watching over you." Evelyn's breath broke. Not fully. Just enough to feel it. The room shifted again. Not physically, but in the way it felt. The silence was no longer empty. It was filled with everything that had never been said. Evelyn lowered her head slightly, the recorder still playing in her hand. The letters spread around her, the truth unfolding piece by piece, and for the first time in her life, the version of her mother she had held on to for decades began to disappear. Not replaced, not yet, but no longer certain, no longer whole, just incomplete. And what remained was something she was only beginning to understand. The recorder clicked softly as the tape reached its end. Silence returned. But it wasn't the same silence as before. It pressed in now. Full. Heavy with everything Evelyn had just heard. She sat there on the bedroom floor, the letters scattered around her, the recorder still in her hand. Her fingers had gone still. Her breathing had not. It came uneven now, catching in her chest before settling again. Rex stayed close, closer than before. His body leaned into her side, not moving, not restless, just present. Evelyn stared down at the letter in her lap, then at the others. So many of them. Years of words she had never read. Years of a life she had never known. Her lips parted slightly. "She didn't leave," she whispered. The words felt fragile, like they might break if she said them too loudly. "She stayed." Her voice faded. She looked around the room. At the bed. The dresser. The small details she had passed without understanding just hours ago. Everything here had meaning now. Every object. Every choice. The house wasn't empty. It had been lived in. Carefully. Quietly. For her. Evelyn exhaled slowly. Her hand moved, gathering the letters back into a loose stack. Not neatly, not yet, just enough to hold them together. She set them beside her. The room felt smaller now, not in size but in focus, like everything that mattered was right here. And yet, something tugged at the edge of that feeling. A thread she hadn't followed yet. Evelyn shifted slightly, her joints stiff from sitting on the floor too long. Rex lifted his head immediately. Alert again. His ears angled toward the front of the house, toward the direction of the road. Evelyn noticed. "What is it?" she asked quietly. Rex didn't answer, but his body changed. Subtle. His posture straightened, his gaze fixed. Listening. Evelyn held still. At first, she heard nothing, just the quiet hum of the house settling, the faint whisper of wind outside. Then something else, far off. Low. A sound carried through the trees. An engine. Distant. But there. Evelyn's chest tightened. "No one comes out here," she murmured. The words came without thought. They felt true, or at least, they had been. Rex stood now, completely. His body positioned between her and the hallway, facing toward the front of the house. Still. Focused. Evelyn slowly pushed herself up from the floor. Her knees protested, but she didn't stop. She moved toward the hallway, each step quieter than the last. The house seemed to hold its breath again, as if listening with her. The sound grew slightly louder, not close, not yet, but moving. Evelyn reached the main room. The thin lines of light from the boarded windows had shifted with the afternoon sun, stretching longer across the floor. Dust moved through them in slow, drifting patterns. Rex stepped ahead of her, toward the door. He didn't bark, didn't growl. But his body was rigid now. Protective. Evelyn's hand hovered near the doorframe. She didn't open it, didn't move the boards. Instead, she angled herself slightly toward the edge of one window, where the wood didn't quite meet. A narrow gap, she leaned just enough to see through it. The road lay beyond the clearing. Empty at first glance. Then, movement. A vehicle. Dark. Moving slowly along the narrow path that led toward the house. Evelyn's breath caught. "That shouldn't be here," she whispered. The car didn't stop immediately. It rolled forward, slow and deliberate, as if it already knew where it was going. Evelyn stepped back from the window. Her heart beat harder now. Faster. Rex shifted closer. His body pressed lightly against her leg, positioning himself between her and the direction of the door. Waiting. The engine sound cut off. Silence followed, heavier than before. Then, a car door opened, closed. Footsteps. Not rushed. measured. Evelyn's hand tightened slightly against the wall beside her. She didn't move toward the door, didn't call out. She waited. The footsteps approached. Across the clearing, up the path, onto the porch. The wood creaked. Once, then again. Rex didn't bark, but a low sound formed deep in his chest, barely audible. A warning held just below the surface. Evelyn stood still, every muscle tight. Then, a knock. 3 sharp raps against the door, not loud, but firm, certain. Evelyn closed her eyes for a brief second, then opened them again. The world felt sharper now, clearer, more defined. The past had been uncovered, but it wasn't finished, not even close. The knock came again, slightly harder this time. Rex stepped forward, directly in front of the door, his body square, unmoving. Evelyn drew in a slow breath, then another. Her voice, when it came, was quiet, but steady. "Who is it?" There was a pause, then a man's voice from the other side. Calm, controlled. "Afternoon, ma'am." Another pause. "I believe you're the owner of this property now." Evelyn's grip tightened. Her eyes flicked once toward Rex, then back to the door. "I'm not interested in selling," she said. The words surprised her. She hadn't planned them. They had simply come. There was a faint shift on the other side of the door, a weight change. Then the man spoke again. "That's a shame." His tone didn't change, didn't rise, didn't threaten. But something in it settled cold in the air. "We're prepared to make a very fair offer." Evelyn didn't answer immediately. Her eyes moved once around the room. The table, the teacup, the coat. The life that had been lived here quietly, carefully, for her. Rex stood firm, unmoving, waiting for her. Evelyn stepped forward. Just one step. Closer to the door. Her voice, when it came this time, was stronger. "I said I'm not interested." Silence followed. Longer this time. Then the sound of footsteps shifting, moving away. The porch creaked again. The car door opened, closed. The engine started. Evelyn didn't move until the sound faded completely, until the quiet returned. But it didn't feel the same anymore. Not empty, not waiting, watching. Evelyn let out a slow breath. Her hand dropped to Rex's back. He relaxed slightly under her touch, but not completely. Not yet. Because now, she understood something else. This place hadn't just been hidden, it had been protected. And whatever had been kept away from it had just come looking. The engine noise faded down the dirt road until it was swallowed by the trees. Silence returned, but it didn't settle the way it had before. It stayed, aware. Evelyn stood in the center of the room, her hand resting on Rex's back. His muscles were still tight under her fingers, his attention fixed on the door long after the man had gone. "All right," she whispered, not to calm him, to steady herself. Rex exhaled slowly, a low breath through his nose, but he didn't move far, just shifted his weight slightly, enough to ease the tension without letting it go completely. Evelyn stepped away from the door, back toward the table, back toward the letters. The house felt different now. Not fragile, not abandoned, occupied, not by people, by purpose. She sat down carefully in the same chair where the teacup rested nearby, untouched. Her hands moved slowly, gathering the letters again, stacking them more neatly this time, not out of habit, out of respect. These weren't meant to be hidden forever, she said softly. Rex turned his head toward her. Listening. She picked up the first letter again, then another. She didn't rush now, didn't try to read everything at once. She took her time, line by line, page by page, and the story unfolded. Not all at once, but enough. Her mother had lived here alone. That much was clear, carefully, quietly, always watching, always aware, not hiding from life, but holding something back, protecting it. Protecting her. Evelyn leaned back slightly in the chair. Her eyes moved across the room again. The coat, the blanket, the bed she hadn't touched. All of it made sense now. Not as remnants, as choices. She stood again, slowly this time. Her body felt different, not lighter, but steadier. She walked to the window, pressed her fingers gently against the wood covering it. There was a small gap where the board didn't meet the frame. Through it, she could see the clearing, the path, the trees beyond. Still, unmoving. No car, no man. Just the place as it had been. And yet, not the same. Evelyn stayed there for a moment, watching. Then she turned. Her eyes moved back across the room. This time she didn't see confusion. She saw structure. Meaning. A life that had been lived with intention, even in silence. Rex moved ahead of her again, but not with urgency now. He walked calmly through the space, checking each corner once more. His posture had changed. No longer tense, no longer searching. Certain. Finished. Evelyn followed him to the doorway, then stopped. Her gaze shifted to the porch beyond. The light had changed. Evening had begun to settle. Soft. Gold. It stretched across the boards and spilled into the room, catching in the dust that moved slowly in the air. She stepped outside. The wood creaked under her feet, but it didn't sound weak, just old. Rex followed, taking his place beside her. The clearing looked different in this light, less threatening, more open. The trees still stood tall, still close, but they didn't feel like they were closing in anymore. They simply were. Evelyn sat down slowly on the edge of the porch. The suitcase still rested where she had left it. Untouched. Unnecessary now. Rex lowered himself beside her. Calm. His head rested near her knee. She reached down, her fingers moving through his fur in slow, steady motions. They sat there for a while. No rush, no movement, just the quiet. The kind that didn't press anymore. The kind that held. Evelyn looked out at the path. At the direction the car had gone. She thought about the man, the offer, the certainty in his voice. Then she looked back at the house, at the place her mother had built, maintained, protected. Not for herself, for this moment, for this understanding. Evelyn exhaled slowly. "I'm not leaving," she said. The words settled easily. No hesitation, no doubt. Rex didn't react, didn't need to. He already knew. The air shifted gently as the evening deepened. A faint breeze moved through the clearing, brushing against the edges of the trees, carrying the scent of earth and something faintly sweet. The house behind her no longer felt like a place she had returned to. It felt like something she had finally arrived at. Not just in distance, in truth. Evelyn leaned back slightly, her shoulders relaxing for the first time since she had stood on that curb. The road that had brought her here, the loss, the silence, the questions, they hadn't ended. But they had changed. And so had she. The porch creaked softly as she shifted her weight. Rex lifted his head briefly, then settled again. The light faded slowly. The sky above the trees deepened into evening. And Evelyn Mercer sat in the quiet, in a place she had once tried to forget, now understanding that nothing had truly been taken from her. Only hidden, only held back until she was ready to see it. Only held back until she was ready to see it. Evelyn sat there a long time after the light slipped behind the trees. The porch had cooled. The air had changed. Somewhere deeper in the woods, a night bird called once, then went quiet again. Rex didn't move. Not when the shadows stretched, not when the wind shifted. He stayed close, his shoulder pressed against her leg, steady as he had been all day, since the moment she stepped off that curb with nowhere to go. It wasn't the letters that found the truth. It wasn't the voice on that old recorder. It was him. He was the one who stopped at the edge of the yard when she couldn't feel it yet. The one who scratched at the floor when she didn't know where to look. The one who stayed still when everything inside her wanted to turn around and leave again. Evelyn looked down at him, her hand resting gently behind his ears. "I would have walked right past it," she said softly. Rex's tail shifted once against the wood.
That was on. She let out a slow breath. For 75 years, she had lived with a story that felt settled, painful, yes, but settled. Something she could carry because she thought she understood it. But sitting here now, she could feel how wrong it had been. Not in pieces, in everything. Her mother hadn't disappeared. She had stayed, just not in the way a child could recognize. Evelyn's eyes moved back to the dark outline of the house behind her. On those years, on that silence, not empty, never empty. She rested her palm lightly against Rex's shoulder, grounding herself in the only thing that had been clear from the start. Sometimes the truth does come to you. Sometimes something loyal has to lead you back to it. She looked out toward the road again, where the man's car had disappeared hours ago. Then back at the door, then down a dress, and in that quiet space between that she had believed and what she now knew, what talk stayed with her. If something hadn't guided her to stop, to listen, to look closer, how many truths had she walked past in her life without ever knowing?